What up, friends? It is your boy Robin Black, home studio. Mark is behind the machine over there. If you are watching, hey, I put on a jean jacket in my own home because I felt like it. That's it. If you're not watching, you're listening. Thank you for listening. This is the YouTube channel, and we do long form hangs here. If you prefer short, to the point, quick, well, Instagram. I do 1 minute breakdowns on Instagram and Twitter. I'm at Robin Black MMA on there. I will not be offended if you shut this off and just go consume 1 minute things. But this is where we hang out for a long time, and we don't find the answer quick. We take the long route. So thank you for hanging, man. It's a real pleasure. And when I was drinking Gatorade if you're listening, I'm drinking out of a bottle of Gatorade, and I was sucking down Gatorade after the show in New York City. We were there, McGregor, Khabib, it went all night. I was covering it with TSN, and we were all night long, and I kept going back to us live in Vegas. It was fun. But I had a bad taste in my mouth after that event because of all the shenanigans. If you consume our stuff, I love martial arts, not so big on shenanigans. You know, anger and, you know, all the outside the cage hostilities. I like the inside the cage and the ring hostilities. And I had a bad taste in my mouth. I went back to my room, and I just I'm not even drinking, you know, McGregor's whiskey or like going into the casino. I'm just hanging. I went live, and I was sucking down some Gatorade, and people were mad. Why are you drinking Gatorade? It's like, because this is my show. While we're at it, this is also not television. We don't have any rules. We tell the truth. We don't have any structures. We don't owe anybody anything. We are in a search for the truth, and it is a fucking privilege and pleasure to be able to say whatever we want. Me and Mark, that's it. We answer to ourselves, and so we tell the truth, and it is incredibly freeing. The world, a lot of the structures of how we consume information is structured in such a way that the truth isn't always there, and when you can tell it, it's really fun, and you can just say whatever the fuck you want, your truth. And what are we going to talk about today? So we'll fucking meander and talk about anything. That's what we do, and it's incredibly freeing, and it's a real privilege to do it. But I think we want to touch on, we made a series called Water, where we look at the art itself. Water, the study of martial arts. So we will break a little segment off into Water, the study of martial arts, and we're going to talk about innovation and improvisation. And where will we start that conversation? Well, we'll start that with Yair Rodriguez in the last second, doing a upside down no-look elbow as a man comes forward. Half spin, prone, bent over, chest parallel to the ground, elbow coming up in an odd arc. We'll start with that, and but not just, hey, look, what's this move? Or, fuck, it's a guy throwing an elbow. It is what it looks like. It's a guy bent over as another man moves towards him through space, throwing his elbow in such a way to intercept him coming in. And did I want to break it down? Of course I wanted to break it down. Why have I not, if you're wondering? Not that any of you were, but some people asked me. Well, you're not allowed to use UFC footage. I know you see it all over Instagram and Twitter, but you get your channels removed if you use their footage. I'm not hating. It's just, this is factual. I tell the truth like we were just going over. If you use their footage, they consider that copyright infringement. They won't get you right away, but eventually they'll get you, and you'll get your shit deplatformed. So everybody else you see putting in, they're like, hey, what about this guy? It's there. Yeah, well, eventually they'll. My friend, Dr. Bo, what's his name? Dr. Bo B. Sorry, Bo. Sorry, Dr. Bo. It's he is the doctor for Dr. Bo. He is the doctor for the Greg Jackson team, and he had 180,000 followers on Instagram because he's has some really interesting shit because Dr. Bo treats the Greg Jackson guys. And they took his shit down because he used UFC footage. And because I got my Instagram put back up, and I don't use their shit anymore. I break down fights from all over the world and all different types. And it's freeing, and people seem to love it. There seems to be 50,000 people following me on Instagram enjoying those breakdowns. It's very nice, and I love it. So I don't use their stuff. I warned Dr. Bo. Coach Duke Rufus also reached out to me. He's like, hey, I got my stuff taken down. What's up? How did you get yours back? And the answer is I got very lucky, and I knew, a friend who was willing to somebody there who was willing to stretch a little and somebody in their thing. And I've worked for them and have a good relationship. And I just got lucky. I got fucking lucky. There was a couple of conversations with an intellectual property lawyer, but all this shit, anyways, this ain't fighting. This is all the shit you don't like talking about. The long and the short of it is, why didn't I do a 1-minute breakdown? They won't let people use their footage. That's their prerogative. It's their company. I'm not hating. That's just what they do. Do I like it? No. Would I love to spend my time breaking down UFC fights? Of course I would. Can I do it? No, I can't. So we'll talk about it from a different way. You can't see it here, but there is a television Mark and I have acquired. We're going to put it on a little, maybe an arm, Mark? What do you think? Put it on an arm out here, yep, and swing it out back here, and we'll use it to look at different footage in the future. Maybe next YouTube one. We'll find a way to do that. So on podcasts, we can tell you about it. But anyways, we got to talk about that. Where did it come from? What does it mean? How does somebody do that? What is innovation? How do you get comfortable enough? What in different moments, why can some people do certain things and others not? Why does John Jones perform the way he does? Anderson Silva the way he did? Some other, on certain nights, Rory McDonald freezes up against Gegard. What does all that mean? So it's going to be that one. Then we're also going to talk about Conor McGregor and potential fight with Cowboy Cerrone. We will talk about that. Normally, I don't really care that much about speculating about potential fights, but that's not just philosophically of my interest all that much when there's so much to talk to about that's right in front of us. But I'm pretty interested in that, and it's hard to avoid, even if that's not your normal shit. And it's not my normal shit. It's still very interesting. And then a fight that is happening, so it's not speculation, right? Henry Cejudo and TJ Dillashaw.
It's official.
That is official. Let's talk about that while we're at it. So really fun. If you're hanging with us, thank you for hanging. And let's dig into some shit. Again, Yair Rodriguez, innovation and improvisation, water, the study of martial arts. And then we'll talk about Cowboy and Conor, and we'll talk about Henry and TJ. So thanks for hanging. Water, the study of martial arts, looking at improvisation and innovation. Why are we looking at that today? Robin Black, thanks for hanging. All right. Why are we looking at that today? Well, a lot of people have been asking about Yair Rodriguez and his KO of the Korean Zombie. Excuse me, I'm parched. And that elbow. So let's start by talking about that fight. So a lot of people had a lot of interest in that. Asked me to break it down in 1 minute. Can't do that right now, but we can break it down in many different ways. We can analyze things in many ways. Historically, contextually, etc., etc. People want to say, what is that elbow? Okay, well, in a lot of ways, it is. Some things are very complicated, and some things are very simple, and most things are both. From a simple perspective, when a guy's running towards you, and he's leaning towards you, there's a space between his chin, right, and his body. You could quite easily put your body into that space. So now I'll be Yair. Space, head leaning. I can put my body into that space. Look where the head is. It is that simple, right? I found a space within the shape of his body to put my body, the jigsaw puzzle of my body, in such a way that a weapon can strike. Quite simple. It is what it looks like. Guy's coming forward, leaves a space for me. I fill that space. There's a weapon that can connect with that thing. That's what it is, right? So what is that move? Mark and I were talking about it on Instagram Live or something earlier, and it looks like that old mother's Muay Thai, as some of my coaches call that old Muay Boran stuff, like that early on, in the formative, climbing up on guys and landing elbows. Really neat stuff, like really neat historical stuff. Looks like that. Somebody will tell you, you don't have to look very far, somebody will show you his Kung Fu instructor was teaching that. I'd be like, well, my Kung Fu instructor invented that. And I think Yair said he saw Cowboy playing with that one time in the gym. So that means, well, a Cowboy invented it, right? Well, where did Cowboy see? Oh, he saw it from some guy that he trained with early on, or some old footage, or people are just, spinning and moving. And in a lot of cases, and I grew up doing Taekwondo and competing in it a lot, and spinning and giving your back as a way to have a powerful tool was very common. Yair comes from a similar background. You know, guys who spinning is something you do sometimes even under pressure, because if you train the spin enough, you get to do what is a natural reaction, which is when something is pressuring me, what we do, even jiu-jitsu or whatever, is we give our back. That's what all humans do. It's a natural thing. So in a lot of fighting, boxing and such, we fight that. We train to overcome that instinct. So somebody's stressing us, common, we turn. In jiu-jitsu, then the game develops and starts attacking chokes and back control and stuff. In boxing or wherever, somebody turns, you hit them. In wrestling, you get to their body. We penalize that natural reaction. Most fighting came from something happened, you give a reaction, that reaction opens us to some choices that we do that improve our situation, our lot in life in that fight. You in that spot have to then find a way to add a technique to improve your situation. And that's how martial arts develop, from two cavemen clubbing each other. But in Taekwondo being a big one of these, but a lot of different martial arts, giving your back that natural response, instead of training to never do it, you train to get comfortable doing it for the purpose of coming around the other side. So we don't train it away. In boxing, in wrestling, you don't give your back. You train that away. But in Taekwondo and a few other, in some areas, some types of karate, some types of kung fu, all different types of martial arts, we don't train that away. We train to use that. We train to use your excitement about seeing our back against you. Think of that. Think how cool that is. Right?
The same thing happened when Hisaki Kato fought Joe Schilling in the Bellator kickboxing.
Yes.
Schilling was overwhelming him, turning into just a war.
Yep.
Spun, knockout, and Joe Schilling was knocked out.
So Mark's over there. Whether it's you or you a viewer or Mark, if you see me under pressure, turn my back, and you've been training boxing or wrestling your whole life, what do you think? What do you think? Oh, shit. That's good, right? Yeah. That's a good thing. And if you think something's good, what do? How do you feel? Good.
Keep going.
Go. That's a green light. Right? And now, I've green lighted you to come forward. Now, as you're coming forward, fucking kick you in the stomach, moving forward, it's over, right? So part of the spin of martial arts is, if you've been trained to never give your back, you will also be trained to think that me giving my back is a huge green light for you. But instead, we in Taekwondo, Yair's martial arts, karate, Taekwondo, wherever he comes up, or anybody else who train that way, train to use that reaction that you have against you. So one more time, and I'm sorry if you already get this. I'm sorry I'm repeating it, but you stress me. My natural human reaction is to give my back. You see that as a terrible thing for me and a good thing for you. So we have two choices that we see right here. One is train to never give our back. Get it? No problem. The other is train to momentarily give our back. Now I'm using your reaction against you. Your reaction of cool, green light. Boom. Kick to the body, kick to the head, spinning back fist. The use of surprise, but not only surprise, momentarily making you feel it's go time, green light, let's do this. It's fucking brilliant. So imagine you train that way your whole life. Yair's been spinning his whole life, okay? And I'm not, none of this in any way. This is things to think about as well as probable explanations based on my lifetime of studying this, including studying martial arts and Taekwondo since I was 7, but also being just deeply immersed in this day to day, all day, every day, and connecting the things that we learn, right? But it's still, I was going to say this is theory, but yeah, everything I'm saying here will, whether we're talking about Duke or Yair or Greg Jackson, or they'll be like, yeah. So this is not theory, but at the same time, I'm gathering information and we're trying to pull it together. So, but in no way am I trying to either diminish or exaggerate Yair's elbow and KO. It is just what it is. This incredibly beautiful moment in time that was created by Yair and created by all of his experiences and all of his knowledge and all of everything he's learned and the state he was in and everything in that moment. Okay, so that's where we're getting to. So we're starting with a lifetime of spinning. You see spinning as something very different. Your experience as somebody who throws spinning kicks and spinning back fists and spinning elbows is that it is not a flashy or crazy technique. It's something that it sits in an area of comfort for you. You know, and there's a whole world. Go look at the CSA gym guys.
Or even Gaston Bolanos.
Yeah, Bolanos is one of them. Bolanos, Eddie Abasolo, the CSA gym guys, they're fucking spinning all the time. Like, watch their training. And trust me, if anybody's wondering why a lot of things that used to be big are not big anymore, and this is not fighting, this is in everything. You know, why are people not watching the Food Channel? Well, you can go on the internet and see fucking amazing food being cooked by geniuses. If people are consuming certain websites less or not watching the UFC on Fox pre and post show or whatever, it's because you can go into fucking Eddie Abasolo or the CSA gym or fucking, you know, Michael Chandler or Anderson Silva or whoever and look at what they're doing. Why on earth would I watch a bunch of people talk about what they may or may not do? I'll go look at what they're doing. It's incredible. You're seeing what these people are doing. Go look at what CSA Gym's doing. These guys are spinning all the time. So what you create is a state of comfort in it. It's not scary. It's not weird. It's not, you know, a show-off thing. It's not a big moment. It's not like a crazy, somehow different than a low kick or a punch. Somebody trained, throws a jab, throws a low kick, does a block, blocks with the knee, takes somebody down. This is all very comfortable stuff. This is what they do all the time, so they're in a state of comfort when they do it. Then you ask them to throw a spinning hook kick, and they're like, okay, cool. And their brain starts to register, okay, there's a big move coming. And so they express it different, they experience it different. It's a big thing they have to build up. It's different. But the CSA gym guys, Yair Rodriguez, lots of people who have spent their lifetime spinning, it isn't that. Jab, low kick, spinning elbow, all the same shit. Not more or less stressful or dangerous or whatever. So to us, we're like, holy shit, do you see what those guys did? But to those guys, it's just a jab or a low kick. That's what's so cool about it. That's why when I keep wanting to break down these guys who are doing these things, not because I think a fucking jab and a low kick is just as beautiful as a jumping, spinning hook kick. Sometimes more beautiful. What is amazing to me is the state of comfort with which these guys do it, and which they do, like everything else in life, by repetition. They practice, and then repetition in stress, and then repetition in reality, and that's how you build anything. Why could fucking these guys and Bolanos has thrown some really amazing ones in Bellator, but personally I enjoy watching Eddie Abasolo throw that spinning shit. Oh. And I got a couple on my @Robin Black MMA on Instagram or Twitter. Let's go back and find them because there's cool arcs and there's other guys too. I've done other ones because this is an of the moment thing. People like, you know, if you were really deep in it. A year or two ago, you started saying, man, these low calf kicks is like a really new thing. It's not new. It's just the guys were using it in these contexts that felt kind of new. These spinning attacks are not new either. This has been going on at the sort of, you know, 85th percentile of guys experimenting with and innovating in the gym. And also, so we have guys who are comfortable spinning all the time, and Yair has been one of these guys since he was probably 12 years old.
Oh yeah,
you know,
that's what I was gonna say. A great example to look at, just to show you that, is Zabit and his brother. So Zabit spins.
Stephen Thompson.
Oh, Stephen Thompson. Yeah, Zabit spins. He's fluid, looks flawless. There's a clip that surfaced recently of his younger brother in a kickboxing bout in New Jersey because he's under Mark Henry's tutelage. He's a teenager, but he's so fluid with that spin. You can tell it's just conditioned to just grow up.
It's all everything.
It's fluid for them.
All of that stuff. And whatever is going to be really new in 2 years, you know, weird angle elbows, spinning kicks, that's the now. I mean, we saw spinning hook kicks. That British guy did one like 7-8 years ago. We've seen them. And spinning elbows, you know, what's his name from John McDessie landed a spinning I think it was a left hook to a spinning back fist, maybe his debut or his second fight, and people were blown away by it. Fucking Makdessi's been doing that since he was a kid. In certain taekwondo, up and down the floor just as many times as he did fucking reverse punches. So this is not natural to these guys. It's very normal to them. So I know it took a long time to get there, but I'm hoping that you see that the difference between Stephen Thompson or, Zabit or these guys is a lifetime of making a thing that seems weird and challenging and like somehow a different level or a different context of thing into not that at all. A spinning hook kick is a low kick, is a jab, is a block, is getting your hands, getting an underhook. It's all the same shit to Zabit. It all is.
It's kind of like we're witnessing that right now with Tension and his kickboxing ability.
Yeah.
During the level of that.
The level these guys are able to flow at, and it's connected to performance, it's connected to the ability to perform freely. That's been one of the great raises in all performance. People playing piano, free climbing, free diving, flipping motorcycles, kickboxing, whatever. The ability to perform freely has been something that we are seeing each other do and understanding can be achieved. And now you've got a guy like Zabit can do that. And he's free to perform in ways that a spinning kick is no different than a jab to him. So we go back to Yair. We have that context. Now let's add a few other things to this brew of what's happening to create this moment. Because the elbow itself is cool, like we said. Guys coming forward, we're in there, boom. That's cool. It isn't just that, though. Because if that's all it was, either it was a fluke or everyone could do it. And it's not a fluke and everyone can't do it. It's what you created. So lifetime of spinning, lifetime of no-look things, contextualizing it different, being free to do it different, free to perform. And now we're going to add a really interesting element that is going to change how we see this, and it's going to change the way we think of, I don't mean to oversell it here, but you can change the way you look at fighting or other performance. And that is fatigue is a factor. And we think of fatigue as a negative factor because it often is. But fatigue is an influencer that is not only negative, because a not exhausted Yair does not throw that. Now, we'll add one more element here that I don't know if we'll get to, but it is relevant here, and that is also a Yair not feeling the click away of time doesn't throw that either. But a Yair feeling the click away of time who's not exhausted maybe doesn't throw that. Because in this case, fatigue created freedom. So think of this. And Mark, we were chatting about this a bit earlier. These guys who are tired, sometimes they just, by not being able to be the way you should be.
Derek Lewis and Volkov.
Derek Lewis. Tell me Derek Lewis being tired. We looked at that later and said, despite how tired he was, he landed that big punch. I'm here to tell you it's partly because of how tired he was. And that's also a part of Yair. And if this is even a percentage of fighters, coaches, fans, people in the game, take this idea and go, and I'll tell you, Greg Jackson, for example, Greg loves these weird ideas and it's probably not new to him. What I'm saying right now, Greg, for example, is like, and others, the others are the weirdos are like, oh yeah, Rob and I knew about this. And that's very common. The fact that I talk about certain things doesn't mean I came up with them by any stretch of the imagination. This is shit people are already doing. It's just not being talked about. People aren't comfortable. We don't get to a point of being able to have the freedom to dissect in this way. We're sitting on a television show and somebody says, who's got a better chin, A or B? And the camera cuts over to fucking whoever and they say, well, this guy's chin held up against this one and he's taking the bigger punches. That's just where we are. That's just how we are sharing information. But fatigue can be a benefit. And that's a great example. Derek Lewis, did he land that knockout despite being fatigued or partially because of it? Because fatigue is this weird exhaustion combined with flow and freedom and the desire to win, just like takes some chains off and you can just throw everything into it. But exhaustion must be mixed with true freedom and the true, unstoppable will to win.
And also, just to add on top of that, to a lower extent, that can be seen, if you don't get the knockout win that way, you can approach it like Robbie Lawler, Condit,
Yeah.
where you just unleash the gas tank, let it all out, and you're flowing, and you overwhelm him. And
that was round 5.
Essentially halfway through 4 to the end of 5.
Yeah, in those moments. So why did so that's a great one, man. Robbie Lawler and Carlos Condit. Robbie Lawler's had other ones, but he cracked the other guys. In this one, Condit would not. As a Condit,
he was weathering the storm to a certain extent.
But also, they both had it. Yeah. They both had it. Right? Why are these the legendary fights and rounds that we've ever seen? Because they both access it. They were free to fight. They were desperately unwilling to lose, unwilling to step back or fold, and then fatigue gave them that freedom to just the true freedom. Robbie versus Rory was that too, and Rory could not be stopped unless you stopped him physically, shut down his body. Why are these fights so brilliant? It is that true freedom that comes with this true fatigue, blowing it all out, nothing left.
And sorry to interrupt, that's pretty much how Lawler stole the title. Like, not stole, but that's how he claimed the title in that rematch against Hendricks.
While we're on it,
being able to turn it up.
But if you remember, he lost the first one, and he learned it. Yeah. Okay, so all of these things can be learned, and it doesn't matter how much you hate certain fighters. We're going to talk about Conor. Speaking of hate fighters, we're going to talk about Conor McGregor and Cowboy Cerrone in a moment. But people will be like, yeah, and Paulie Malignaggi, who is my friend and who'd like a fight with Conor. There's a bitch in him, and once a bitch, always like they'll say that. People who hate him will be like, oh, he quits or whatever. It doesn't matter who you are. These things can be trained. They can be learned, and then you can improve yourself. Doesn't matter how much my boy Paulie hates Conor and wants that fight. He knows that's true. You know, once a bitch, always a. First of all, I like female dogs. I like little sweet dogs. They're the sweetest animals in the world. So you don't have to badmouth dogs. But that's just not true. You can develop these. And Robbie Lawler in round 5 of the first fight with Johnny Hendricks lost the fight because he couldn't free himself to go there while fatigued. Conor McGregor did lose fights both to Diaz and to Khabib. I mean, or he was going to lose that fight. That fight was lost. So that's an imperfect example. But to Diaz, because he couldn't get there. He hasn't yet to get there, to truly get there. And it's something that can be learned because Robbie Lawler is the proof of it. He lost the UFC welterweight title because he couldn't be free with the added freedom that fatigue can give you. And this is a hard one to grasp, and people will deny it, but there's a mental freedom that can come with that. And we've seen it over and over again. And we saw Robbie not access it, and then you see him at the beginning of round. Do you remember the beginning of round 5? Yeah. Like he was sitting there going, yes, I know what I failed to do. I can't believe I fought my way back to get it again, and now I'm free. And it's moving. Watch those 10 rounds. Go fucking watch those. It will move you.
And to be able to do that at that age. You would think maybe it's something a younger fighter would have had to correct to do that at that age.
Robbie Lawler I mean, he's special. He is special. He's been special for many different reasons. He was 17, 18, and 19, and he was fighting. Like, imagine if he knew what Zabit's younger brother knows. If he could have gained an access to this performance, this type of coaching, and this type of knowledge that, Magomed Sharapov has. Imagine if Lawler could have had that at 19. Instead, he had to fucking find it in his 30s.
Yeah, but he was already there. Even at 19, Team Quest was at the forefront. So even back then, he was already at the very...
It was different, though. But
it was so much... it's so far behind compared to that.
They had to find it through fighting. Yeah. Right? Which is what the Russians...
It was a trial and error era.
The Russians do it still. Yeah. One of the reasons Khabib is so good is because he just had to beat every single other 8-year-old, then 10-year-old, then 12-year-old. Then when he was 12, and he beat all the 12-year-olds, the 14-year-olds, and when he was 14, and he beat the 16. That's how they got there. Yeah, that's how he got there. So Lawler was a part of that. This is an interesting conversation. We'll have to mine another day, because Robbie Lawler is a connection to that, between that time and this time, and it is really quite fascinating. But yeah, so now we've got Zabit with a lifetime of spinning, and Yair with a lifetime They were going to fight. They should.
That was the fight that was supposed to happen.
They should fight. I mean, I say that entirely selfishly, because what I mean isn't they should fight. They should do what's right for them. What I mean is, please fight. Because I myself and none of us have any fucking business telling any of these guys what they should do at all. But we can say what we'd like.
It's perfect for around July.
I'd like
International Fight Week.
I'd like to see it. But can I say they need to fight? This guy said this or did this. I remember one guy when I was fighting, he was like, "You gotta fight me, bro. I called you out." I'm like, I don't gotta do shit. Also, I was offended by you. I'm not giving you something for offending me. Fuck you. You know? So they don't have to do shit. They'll do what they want, but it would be cool if they fought. But anyway, so we find ourselves in that context where this guy's doing that. Now, the thing itself, did he see it? The truth is, if you're in balance or enough balance to generate force, and somebody is in particular moving towards that force, you're going to fucking knock guys out. And I think we can see it on weirder angles and different angles and other weapons and from the ground. There's going to be more and more and more and more of this. So that's good news. If you thought that one cool moment that Yair created from a lifetime of spinning combined with, being free to perform with everything he learned and being exhausted and finding just in that moment and running out of time to just literally just desperately try to make his body do this thing that he saw one time that maybe Cowboy did and this other. There's going to be a lot more of that. It's going to be a lot more of that because now these guys understand this whole thing. Only a few years ago, never front kicks don't work. Never cross your arms when you get an arm, never cross your feet when you got a guy in an arm bar. The can opener doesn't work. Don't use side kicks. Boss, who's genius and brilliant, and I love Boss, will tell you that back in the day, when he was fighting and then later commentating in Pride and stuff, he'd be like, jabs don't work in MMA. Boss is a genius. He just believed what he believed in the context of the time. Right? That all of it was bullshit. All of it. Never always keep your hands up. Never put your hands down. You must move your head this way. Never cross your feet. All of it is bullshit. Why are we ever taught that in the first place? Because when you're a beginner, you need some guidance. You need structure. You do. But so the structure worked with the structure that we had. But when I was over in Korea and I was watching the Korean Zombie and Doo Ho Choi and others train, they weren't starting with, this is a jab, put your hands here. They were starting with creating sensitivity between distances. That was the new fundamentals that they were learning in Korea because they're good at it. Korean Zombie, just because he got hit in an elbow doesn't mean that he wasn't fucking figuring that night out.
He was ahead. He was winning that fight. He was landing shots.
And not getting hit. Yeah. Because that's
really good.
That's what they worked on. Yeah. And when you saw Doo Ho Choi in the early days, he was fucking getting in, landing, getting out.
And that's, the Korean Zombie is quote unquote, in that sense, a traditional striker. That was traditional striking.
Yeah.
There wasn't any quote unquote spinning shit.
If you're watching this or just as this piece, something Mark just said about Yair coming from a traditional background, I'm going to connect that.
Korean Zombie.
Korean Zombie coming from a traditional background. I'm going to connect that into what Conor McGregor and Cowboy later. It's going to be something we're going to look at that theoretically connects some ideas about what Conor is now and what he did to be difficult to fight during the period where people were having a hard time getting to him and beating him. But for now, so yes, we look at all of that. This is Water, the study of martial arts. We're looking at innovation and freedom and improvisation. Improvisation at its root means in this moment, we're just free to break some rules. Well, as we let the rules fall away, and I just did Muay Thai today. Coach Evan Boris on Instagram, he's at Striking Concepts, he's a good friend, and we were training today, and he was training me on fundamentals, because you got to fucking learn fundamentals when you start. But when you get good enough, they don't have to apply to you, not in the ways that they did. You can become free. Those rules start to fall away. And as the rules fall away, improvisation, meaning just breaking the boundaries and making it up as you go along, starts to become the norm, then you don't even need the word improvisation. For you, fighting is at its root improvisation. And that's where guys like Zabit and Yair start to get to. Now, not all the time. Sometimes they're running the play here, we get this, then we do that, and as we circle it, we do that, and they run those plays, they train those plays. Mark Henry trains them, and Greg Jackson, and whoever, they train these guys to do them. But the other times, they're coloring all outside the lines. That's improvisation. And innovation means we're creating something that wasn't there. You know, we're innovating a new idea. The truth is, there are no new ideas. None, you know. None. Because if any human being has been able to do the things that humans can do now, a human has done it. A human has spun and elbowed a guy in the face. Go look on the fucking internet. There's guys who don't know how to fight. Mark, you've seen some of this. I've broken some of them down. Guys who don't know how to fight, doing weird spinning shit and knocking guys out.
It's all over World Star Hip Hop.
Yeah, World Star Hip Hop. Yeah, go to fucking World Star Hip Hop. Who the fuck are these guys? Are they innovating? Did Yair innovate? You know, who was the first spinning hook kick? And the guys like...
Oh, it was Edson Barbosa?
Edson Barbosa. Oh,
Terry Edom?
Terry Edom. Was that the first one?
I think
in
so.
UFC? It's been not MMA, UFC, not globally.
Major promotions?
That was one of the first big ones, yeah. Was he innovating? Fuck, people have been spinning hook kicking guys in the head since, for sure, the 1500s, you know? And when people were oppressed, they had to train to fight. And when people trained to fight, they started with simple things, and then they got more and more complex. And when it was too complex, the way you beat complexity is with simplicity. So what we'll see for the next while is more and more and more of all these spinning and hooking and weird angles and weird timings and weird rhythms and breaking all those rules. And that'll work for months and years. And then the way you'll beat that is go straight back to jabs and fucking low kicks. And this is the beauty.
Yeah, I mean, when we forecast for the future, a guy like Sean O'Malley is going to grow up creatively. Spinning is going to be the norm. And he might get to the point where he's, UFC champion, whatnot, dominant champion, and he can only get shut down by a fundamental.
The guy's going to shut him down is going to throw jabs and low kicks. And there's only so much learning and training and creating and thinking that your brain can handle. More. We can certainly do more than fucking... I can think and handle more information than I could 20 years ago. And I was younger, and presumably my brain was less damaged from fighting and or drugs and alcohol in the 90s. But now I can handle more because the world we live in trains us to have to process more. A little more fragmented, or a lot more fragmented, but we're able to process more. So they're going to be able to do more, but there's still a limit. And if you keep filling it with fluidity and movement and circular movement and spinning and stuff, well, then you're not going to be able to focus as much on the fundamentals, the original concepts, the simple concepts or the root concepts. Move your feet, throw a jab, protect your head, answer with that thing. And those will come back in again. And then people will call them fundamentals, and they'll say, this is how you have to fight. And the people will believe that for a while. And then after they do, some other people will start doing weird shit again. And this is how it will ebb and flow.
It's just the truth of the month.
Yeah. And I sure hope that I live till 80 or 85 and I'm somewhat healthy, because I want to see this cycle happen 3, 4, 5 more times and have it change, and then contextualize it with how we saw it in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. Some of the great martial artists, Dan Inosanto, man. What is he, in his 70s?
I think past that. He looks
older,
like it, but yeah.
That guy's adding knowledge on knowledge on knowledge, seeing cycles over and over and over again. And you can only imagine how, if I'm telling you this is going this way, and it does, what I'm saying, the movements and the ebb and flow of this is pretty self-evident, If I'm seeing it for the 3rd and the 4th time since I was a 7-year-old training martial arts and feeling this movement, imagine fucking Dan Inosanto. He was around with Bruce Lee seeing this stuff in that stage of development and taking ideas that people have been doing for hundreds of years, but writing them down and making photos and creating structure and their structure worked with a lot of, don't have too much structure. It's fucking brilliant. But yeah, I hope I live till 80, 85 because, or older. We live in a culture, maybe we can live 110 maybe.
Well, I was going to say, on the flip side of that coin, the only martial art right now at this moment, or the most prominent martial art, where it's the complete opposite, where Dan and San will say, oh, what the hell was that? Would be jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is always innovating. There's always a new type of game, but strangely, it only applies in that world. It doesn't.
We'll talk about
to mixed martial arts.
We could just strictly stay on this topic because this is, we'd stay on this topic for months and bring in people and go further into these things, but they weaken. Jiu-jitsu has weakened the same way karate weakened, and I train jiu-jitsu and I love jiu-jitsu, so please don't any jiu-jitsu guys get mad at me. But it is weakened in the sense that the deeper it goes into jiu-jitsu free of strikes, the less real it becomes. And that's true. Karate went so far with no wrestling and no grappling and no choking and no hyperextension of limbs, so it became not quite as real. And jiu-jitsu is evolving that way right now as well, where there's all this stuff that if you and Aikido, Joe, of course, fucking loves to show you what Aikido has become. The big problem with Aikido is it's done by people who both agree to do Aikido, right? And there's a point at which it wasn't always bullshit. Aikido was a real martial art, really valuable and really useful. And at its root, it still is. Philosophy of non-resistance. Somebody's trying to throw you. It's a reaction to judo. It's beautiful. There was real shit in there. Well, if you let jiu-jitsu go on, and it won't, because it also gets tested in martial arts, in mixed martial arts, and has to change. But if you just let a bunch of jiu-jitsu guys go off and live on an island and do only jiu-jitsu for 100 years, and their kids and their kids and their kids, and then they came back and they tried to do jiu-jitsu, somebody would punch them in the face and it'd be over.
That's a big argument that Hero and Gracie was talking about. He's like, because he was talking about Jeff Glover's donkey guard. One night. He's like, it's like in a fight, it's like, you can get hit.
Yeah, and I'm with him.
That's the difference, sport versus.
And I'm with him, but in his context,
that's his roots. Is the self-defense jiu-jitsu
and we
side.
compete in martial arts in the context of rules, structure, playing surface, time, etc. And in that context, that fucking donkey guard is brilliant.
Exactly.
So it's great there. But if you allowed that to happen for too long, and people eventually, 3 or 4 or 5 generations, and people forgot punches existed on this desert island, they'd be doing this crazy shit, and they would think that's fighting. And then somebody would stomp on their head when they tried to grab them and pull them down into, a heel hook scenario. It won't happen, and jiu-jitsu is a beautiful martial art, and Huron and others having this conversation only benefits the martial arts, and we have a tendency to want to argue about these things, but the truth is that the arguing is to our detriment if all we're going to do is take sides and fight, go, no, actually this is true, no, this is true. You blend the knowledges, and that's how things grow. But we will return to this because this is a pleasure to talk about these things and to gather these different aspects, and maybe we'll also try to, we will, Mark, let's remember this too. We will purposefully create episodes of Water with guests. Yeah. When we get some of these, and we'll say Ray Longo. Well, Ray Longo came up from a particular system that Dan Inosanto's way. So we'll gather history and knowledge and mine that. So that's going to happen. But for now. We will revisit this topic, but let us end it on saying that Yair's elbow, brilliant, beautiful, wonderful, free. Does it suit the word improvisation? Definitely, in the context. Will it allow us to view fatigue in its freeing qualities when combined with the unstoppable desire to win in a different way? I think it will. Will somebody use that in a way? I'm going to definitely get on the phone with Mullins about that. And I am still working on a book with Dr. David Klonsky. I'll be about combat sports psychology. So I'm going to bring this up. When I'm in Turkey in about 14 hours, I'm flying to Bahrain. I'm going to have a layover in Turkey. He and I are going to Skype from the airport in Istanbul. So I'm going to talk to him about that. And then we'll come back. But in the meantime, congrats, Yair. That was real cool. We want to take a look at the possible fight. What would we call this? Early fight preview? We might call it an early fight preview, even though the fight doesn't exist currently. But Conor McGregor and Cowboy Cerrone. I may sneeze here. If I do, Mark, you don't have to edit it out, but I will turn my head. Sometimes you just look at a bright light and it'll work. Cowboy Cerrone and Conor McGregor. Normally I don't really dig into fights that don't exist yet, and not for any reason, rule or, I don't have any like structures that say do or don't do things. This is not of my interest. I find that being in the moment and dealing with what is has been a great source of happiness in my life in the last 6 months. And so, later on in the podcast, we're going to talk about Henry Cejudo versus TJ Dillashaw. Well, that fight is booked. So that would be normally where I'd put my attention. But hey, rules, and this isn't one, but even if it was, rules are meant to be broken. Things are imperfect. You don't always think one way and not another. And this one's just too good. This one's too interesting. And beyond that, I think the other reason that this one I talk about is, unlike many of these other situations where if somebody's talking about a particular fight, I actually think this one will happen. I think it's extraordinarily likely. Because earlier on, and we'll sometimes we go on Instagram Live before we come on the YouTube channel. I was talking about how I can tell the truth. It's incredibly freeing to tell the truth. We don't have any laws or rules, or this is not a TV program. This is done by just me and Mark. We can do whatever we want. We can tell the truth. And I realize how really annoying it must be for people who are in certain contexts where they're forced to bullshit. Like when a fight will end and then they'll go on a desk on a television show, whether that's, and they'll talk about, the rankings. We've known for years fights don't get made because of rankings. And we know that. I don't think that's a good or a bad thing. We just know that's true. We know fights are made entirely for commerce. And every now and again, there's some other variable that happens, but they make this is first and foremost a business, the UFC. Now, I'm talking about the UFC here because, and for the most part, Bellator, and because that is at the root of what we do in North America. Is everything is commerce driven. You open a restaurant, it's driven by commerce, not by flavor. If the flavor helps sell your burgers, then that becomes a part of it, but it's about selling burgers. And that's what's going on in fighting in North America. One championship, Brave, EFC, and in Asia and in Europe, there are other motivations and other purposes. But in North America, the big ones, and it's not only in North America, big companies, Coke and Pepsi, they are commerce driven. And the UFC and Bellator, they're going to be primarily commerce driven. Even when there's change, like Scott Coker will tell you, and he's telling the truth. Scott's a very, very truthful cat. That they'll do things in a different way. They do things in a different way. They will make those choices. They will make it about sport first. But that choice has to be made. And so it's about sport, it's about tournaments, about these things. It really is. But the only way, and their motives might be, we want to do that. But the only way they get that to happen is by getting the parent company to see that it would be to their benefit. So everything has to happen for money, right? And again, that's a non-judgmental statement. That is just an observation. Observations don't have to have good or bad meanings. It's just, this is what it is. With that being the case, Conor McGregor generates more money for this company than anybody else or any 2 or 3 other individuals combined. One of the biggest root sources of income is when Conor McGregor fights. Now, we can judge what I'm about to say next. It can make you angry or not angry, but it's irrelevant. And what you can do is learn from it and see how it applies to you and whatever you do. But because of that, he has a lot of leverage. Leverage is something where if you're, and I'm not trying to talk down, I'm not trying to oversimplify, but leverage is a thing, whereas if you have a lot of value to your employer or your business partner, or, you're buying or selling something, you have a lot of value, maybe even a little more value than most, or even more value than your partner, or they can't live without you. That's leverage. And you can earn that leverage. You can create that leverage. And a lot of the way it's created today. And this is why I don't talk about fights that don't exist, because this is all what's happening, right? It is, well, shouldn't this guy deserve that fight? He beat that. None of this is relevant. we're having a conversation that's interesting to you and I if we say this guy deserved that fight. He's the better martial artist. He just won this. He deserves a shot. That's our conversation. That's our passion. But what's really going on behind it is this. And again, I don't think that's a good thing or a bad thing. That's just what it is. So if you have leverage, you can create a scenario that benefits you. That's what happens. These days, one of the biggest ways to gain leverage is you have an audience and you have influence, right? If you have an audience and you have influence, if you have an audience, they will pay to see your fight. If somebody will pay to see you fight, that benefits your partner, in this case the UFC. It's not an employer because they're independent, but that is the case. So because he has all that audience, because he has influence, and influence isn't just they like you, hating you, people hate you, that's a lot of influence. If you hate Conor McGregor and you want to fucking see Cowboy kick the shit out of him, well, that's a lot of influence, right?
It's the original Floyd blueprint.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Floyd's literally like, cool. Oh, you hate me. Wait a second. That's powerful.
That's when he turned from Pretty Boy Floyd to Money Mayweather.
Yeah, exactly. Because, and that's even just money. Like, that's so WWE.
He made like a rap music video. Like, it was a whole rollout just to, like,
brilliant.
Create his heel character.
They want to make fun of Floyd Mayweather and say he can't read and shit. Look how smart that guy is. But you don't have to necessarily read to see these patterns in how human behavior happens. Anyways, Conor McGregor, a lot of money, a lot of influence, a lot of attention. Attention and influence translates into money for the company. Therefore, the company wants him to fight. Therefore, he has leverage. They're like, we'd really like you to fight. He's like, cool, then you have to do these things. If you're valuable enough, they'll go, okay, sure, we'll do those things. Don't be mad. You can make that true of your business partners. You can make that true of your small company. You can make that true of your punk rock band. You can make that true of your fucking YouTube channel. You can make that true on Instagram. This is something valuable.
Wendy's actually kind of doing that right now.
What's Wendy's doing?
Wendy's, they're like their online social media, their Twitter campaign, they're just like shitting on, throwing shit. They're interacting with people. Like, they're doing a really good job.
So Wendy's is being Floyd Mayweather?
They're being like Conor McGregor online. Yeah,
brilliant.
I love it.
Brilliant. I mean, we live in Canada, but we're very similar to our American neighbors in a lot of ways, different in others. But you guys voted for Donald Trump. Half of you hate him, right? Half of you don't like that. You're really mad. That's powerful. And if you keep getting outraged, at Conor McGregor or Floyd Mayweather or Wendy's, you're going to give him power. Anyways, this guy's got a lot of power. As a result, they want him to have a fight. Mm-hmm. What kind of fight does Conor McGregor want right now? Conor McGregor wants Khabib. Khabib doesn't need that, want that. It's just that it's hard to make. It's hard to... And you've heard him say, I want Khabib or the fight that'll get me to Khabib. You know what fight that is? Any fight. Literally, any single fight is the next fight. Then Conor McGregor, 1 million people watch the guy fight. If he wins, that's all he needed. He goes on TV, says some Conor McGregor shit. Everybody goes crazy. The whole world lights up. Wendy's starts swearing at people, whatever the fuck's happening out there in the universe. What was the other thing you said today that you were like, oh, Tito Ortiz goes, Mark's like, Jesus are we living in the real world? Tito Ortiz showed up at Chuck Liddell's open workout to heckle him. That's a Wendy's move now, right? Now that's going to be my new thing. See, it's a Wendy's thing. So that's it. All he needs to do is win any fight. But what kind of fight? So now we've established UFC needs Conor McGregor to fight. Any single fight will do under this scenario, and that is true. You can argue that if you like, but I think factually that's difficult to argue, right? All you need to do is have him fight something. If he wins, give him a mic. He'll do the rest. Yeah. We assume that's true. Again, this isn't what we think somebody deserves or where in the rankings or who's the best fighter. This is strictly from the point of view as an analyst of what a corporation would think based on the information we have about corporate behavior and money and leverage, right? This is where we are. Mm-hmm. So any fight will do. So any fight. Cool. So now we have that space. Conor McGregor must fight. Let's get one. And don't believe any of the hype when people are like, yeah, but he's under suspension, commissions. UFC doesn't give a fuck about any of that. No promoter gives a shit about that. They'll make the deal they want to make, and whatever some commission, a bunch of guys sitting around, pencil pushers somewhere, says, they'll work around that. And in past times, this is how you worked around it. In modern times, you have a lobbyist call your buddy who does a thing, or they say, yeah, he's suspended for 3 months. They're like, great, we made a deal. That deal isn't contingent on when he's suspended. Irrelevant. None of that shit matters. So they'll make a deal with Conor McGregor. Any fight will do. But now we have any fight. So now we've reduced it to McGregor will fight. McGregor has leverage. This is going to happen. Any fight will do. It's not really any fight. We start the conversation with any fight, but really it's got to be... Oh, actually, sorry. Any fight will do, but we can do better than any fight, right? So name a random 155. Gleason Tebow. Conor McGregor versus Gleason Tebow, who currently isn't in the UFC. In fact, he will be fighting on Tito versus Chuck undercard. I don't know if you knew that. Yes, he will be fighting on that. Against Efrain Escudero, I believe. But one of those two and Conor McGregor, not ideal, but they would still do it if that was the fight. If McGregor said, that's it, Gleason Tebow said some shit about my son, I want Gleason Tebow, they would make that fight. He has the leverage, they'll make the money. Wouldn't be ideal, it would only do 800,000 fucking cells of whatever, who cares? But they would make it. But they'd like to do a little better than any fight.
Yeah, I mean, so they essentially like to recreate Seaver McGregor, except a better quality.
You know what we'd like to create? Diaz McGregor. But you know what we can't do? We can't get Nate Diaz. Yeah, why? Because Nate Diaz, again, this is strictly... I like to analyze fighting, but you analyze behavior, corporate behavior, the behavior of North Korea, it's all just combat, right? So the UFC would like anyone... You know who'd be great? Nate Diaz. But you know who wouldn't be great? We can't go with Nate Diaz. Why? Fuck, you and I would love that. But Nate Diaz, they find him difficult to deal with. He's unpredictable. He would say, I want 10 million, and then a few days later he'd want 15. And don't judge Nate Diaz. We like Nate Diaz. We respect Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz should do what the fuck Nate Diaz wants.
He's earned the right to be difficult.
Exactly. But while Nate Diaz is doing what he wants, they'd be like, fuck. Be great to have Nate Diaz, but he's so confusing. Why is he confusing? Because he's doing what he wants. How do we feel about that? We like that. Good for you, Nate Diaz. Do what you want. But they're like, we don't like that. That's very stressful and unpredictable. We can't have unpredictable. So what could we do that would be kind of like Nate Diaz, where it's like somebody who fights the right way, people know him, he's had a lot of fights, he's a big name, he's a gunslinger, but unlike Nate Diaz, he's really easy to deal with. He'll take any fight.
The ultimate company man.
Fucking Cowboy Cerrone. That's where we end up. We want any fight will do. Well, how can we do better than any fight? Well, the next best thing would be Diaz. Wait a second. This guy's easy to deal with. And by all accounts, he's already made the deal. What does he normally make? Let's say 300 and 300. He makes good money. Oh, yeah. They're just like, we'll give you $2 million. It's like, done. Do I get free beer with that? Yes, you get free beer. Cool. Tell me when he's ready. It's probably done already. He's done. Now you got to go to Conor McGregor, who, unlike, if we go back to leverage, what is leverage? Leverage means you are valuable enough. And just simple fucking Audiatar, who is a very smart man and a great manager and a friend.
Audie's one of the best managers.
Yeah, Audie's fucking legit and very generous. He's given me a lot of great advice for just inviting me to his office. He's always been a great guy, and most people love Audie. I have one friend who doesn't like Audie, but I'm not going to say his name. But everybody else, Bisping will tell you. But so smart manager will literally go and say, and this again. Do we think this is good or bad? It is what it is. We have the ability to look at how people do these things and go, wait, how could we do that in our business dealings? What can we learn? We like to learn about punches and kicks and how to beat half guard and how to overcome fear and how to do all that. We prefer to learn that about fighting, but what can we learn by the way they apply those ancient military tactics to their business, right? Still all the same shit. Analyzing business behavior is very similar to analyzing war, which is very similar to analyzing martial arts. It's all fucking connected. You look at it, and what do you do if you're Audi or whoever, a military leader or whoever in this scenario? You figure out your value. It's like, how much is the UFC going to make? Okay, well, they're going to make 200 million. I'm just inventing a number. 200 million. Well, cool. We want 100 million of that. They'll be like, you can't have 100 million. You're like, okay, well then, we don't need to fight Cowboy Cerrone. And then they look back and they go, fuck, it's not a situation of either 100 million or 150 million. It's a situation of we either make our 100 million and give Conor the other 100, or we make 0 because that guy's not going to fight. And that's how you use leverage. Either they want you or they don't. If they want you, it's 100 million. And if they don't, then you don't fight. And if you talk to Conor or John Kavanaugh or anyone close to him, they all come from a camp, and this is probably a good thing, that martial arts is for pleasure. Martial arts is for growth. Martial arts is for learning about the world and becoming a better person. Combat sports is for money. Because you are taking brain damage and body damage and taking years off your life. And if your number's 100 million and they come back at 80 and you want to do it, you do it. If you don't want to do it, you don't do it. And I'll tell you what they don't care about, these guys at this point. They don't care if you call them a pussy. They don't care after fighting Nate Diaz and after fighting, all of these things. They don't care if you say he needs to do it for his legacy. They don't care about any of that. They care about creating a scenario in which they get what they want. Then once they've done that and that's gone, that doesn't exist anymore. Now only the fight exists. But for McGregor and people like that, it sits in this place where give us what we want or we don't. And they understand it. And the UFC understands it too. And any business relationship understands it. It's not like we can either muscle McGregor and get 130 of the 200, or we give him and we get 100. We're either going to get the 100 or 0. And so they'll take it. And it'll take a little while. It'll get done. Cowboy's sitting around. He'll say some other shit, which may or may not be relevant. Then it'll get done. Don't judge these people. Understand this, that once those deals are made, they no longer exist. That's why they deal with them. That's why they work so hard at the beginning. That's why they build leverage, and that's why they negotiate so aggressively. And that's why Nate Diaz, don't judge fucking Nate Diaz. If Nate Diaz doesn't want to fight, Nate Diaz ain't fucking fighting for no one. He'll fight when he wants to fight, and he'll fight when he gets what he deserves for it. It's his life, and we can all we want. Of course we can. We're fans, and we pay our bill. We have fuck you chicken shit. You're ducking this guy, but they don't give a fuck. Nate Diaz doesn't give a fuck, and neither should he. Nate Diaz should do exactly what he wants, and what he wants right now is, and he's got enough money. Then after that, he can sit back and go, McGregor didn't want to fight me. And I'll support his right to do that. That guy earned everything now. And so did McGregor, and so did Cowboy. And so all of this adds up. Cowboy's probably already said yes. Yes, Cowboy is a Nate Diaz type. People know him. They like him. He's exciting. You can sell it. He's that type of fighter. He comes to fight. All of that. If and when this fight happens, we'll talk about the fight. But let's just talk about one thing about it. McGregor's greatest strength is creating the ability to undermine your psychological welfare as to how it relates to you in battle. If you can fucking do it to Eddie Alvarez and make him one of the greatest game day performers ever, have a bad performance. Eddie talked about it. I love Eddie. This is not talking out of turn. If he could do that to Eddie Alvarez, one of the strongest, Cowboy has admitted and talked openly about the fact that he has some fear, anxiety, and weakness when it comes to getting the best out of himself. Fucking McGregor's going to try to feast on that. Doesn't mean he'll do it. This could bring out the best in Cowboy. He'll understand it. You could also try too hard, and the whole thing starts to become irrelevant to Cowboy, right? But speaking of Nate Diaz beat the shit out of Cowboy. Cowboy took it too, by the way. Took it. Fucking physically absorbed that. That's amazing. But Cowboy said, he got in my head, I think. I wasn't performing right. And that's true. He wasn't trying to undermine Diaz. That's a credit to Diaz. When Pettis took him out, he said, I looked over and I was like, fuck, I pissed him off. And he was in his own head. That's it. One of his biggest challenges, as great a martial artist, fighter, athlete, everything that Cowboy is. It's one of his biggest challenges. That's one of Conor's greatest strengths, is fucking making guys crack. Couldn't do it to Khabib. Couldn't do it to Floyd. And he couldn't do it to Nate Diaz. But he has done it to everyone else. Everyone else. At every level. That's going to be something to watch for. But we'll talk more about that fight. Actually, I do want to talk about this. I teased this. If you're watching this alone, we had a little conversation during water about Yair and his no-look elbow, and I mentioned this. When we look back at what McGregor did, so Cowboy's trained a lot with say, Holly Holm. He's trained a lot with Carlos Condit over the years, Cub Swanson. When we look at what made McGregor great on his way up, it's all still there, and more, I'm sure. Remember how Condit, while we're talking about our love of the fucking Diaz brothers, remember how Condit beat Nick Diaz. And I say beat hesitantly. Like, I didn't fucking judge it. Although I did think that under the... Anyways, he beat him. Like, I don't want no part of that. Love them both. As a martial artist, not as a fucking sporting event, as a martial artist, that was brilliant. And that was a brilliantly contested martial arts contest. But that game of stick play, control the distance, not be hit, be on the outside, touch people up, create a wall, stay hit and move to the outside. Remember, Diaz was fighting from southpaw, Conor orthodox, but the same thing when you swap them. Same thing. That's really the game. That game, the game that Condit played against Nick Diaz, that's what Conor is. He is that game plus the sort of one-shot pop of traditional martial arts. The one hitter, the finish, the big shot, the big executed kill shot of certain traditional martial arts. He's those two things combined. Condit fought that fight a particular way, and if you add the kill shot to it, the big smashing committed finishing shot, whether that is a big kick, a shot, a spear to the body, the big left hand, whatever it is. That combination of outside game with kill shot is McGregor. And interestingly, if you go back, up until he fought at the 120s at the Sky Dome here, George St. Pierre, who did he fight at the Sky Dome?
Jake Shields.
Jake Shields. In the fights before Jake Shields, George St. Pierre had a whole bunch of decisions and didn't really hurt his popularity and stuff, but people talked about it. Oh, his decisions just jabbing guys. Condit played with a low kicking game, but George's game was very similar. Just a different tool. Used the jab to keep you far away, create a danger bubble that you hesitated on the outside, stayed at distance, pop the jab, stay far away, pop the jab, stay far away. That game hadn't really been played, and George mastered it. I know he developed it with Faraz and with other members of their team. It was that brilliant game. Looked very different from the way that Condit fought Diaz, but conceptually it was the same. Space, pop, back to space, pop, back to space. At a game, people didn't know how to do it. Similar, when he fought Jake Shields, they were trying to create what McGregor did later. And yes, it's not a left hand, and yes, he's not a southpaw, and yes, the tools were different, but conceptually it was the same thing. It's distance, fight at distance, use the tool, the jab, but create kill shots. They talked about it going in. If you look at all the interviews, we're going to do that, but add the finish. And he had two tools, overhand right, turning side kick. And he just couldn't fucking make them work. But conceptually, what they were trying to create was what Conor McGregor later was and is, which was owning the range, beating you up at distance, and creating a danger zone that makes you hesitate while they piece you up from the outside with kill shots that he commits to. And that is a fascinating thing. But when you look at it from that context and just setting aside the mental games and setting aside all those things, when Greg Jackson looks at Conor McGregor that way, they know you bring in Condit and you have him play that way with a more committed thing, and you create, the tools are different, yes, but the concepts and the philosophies are the same. Make space, stay on the outside, pick a guy apart, and use kill shots. And you turn that against him, and you hurt him on the kill shots. Greg Jackson will really embrace that assignment. And that assignment isn't, what do you do about the left hand, and what do you do about the flim flam, and how do you deal with McGregor's distance management, and are you going to take him down? Those are questions, old questions that are still being asked, but the modern thinking will be, how do we deal with the deep outside with the kill shot? And they have the tools and the people to do it. So it'll be really fast, but you have to be able to show up and be your best that day. And Conor's going to try
Cowboy's got a really good body for that.
His
frame is really good for that.
Very good. Fighting. But you mentioned body. He also he gets shots. Hurt to the body, right? Yeah. I don't know if he's ever talked about this. I suspect he has.
Conor will talk about this fight.
For sure he will. But I don't know. Has he ever talked about the fact that he drinks a lot and that's why his liver is dicey?
I don't think
I don't know if he has.
That connection.
I don't know if that connection's been made. He probably has. I've never heard it. But think about it, right? Think about it, right? Like most athletes, most high-level athletes are not consuming the amount of... The liver is a filter to process poisons. When you fucking consume a lot of alcohol, I don't know if Cowboy does drugs, but alcohol and or any other things that you have to process through your body, it processes through the filter of that liver. That's a lot of work for that thing. Yeah. So anyways, there could be a connection there. I don't know. If that's true, though, that McGregor has been sucking down a lot of that whiskey he made. So I think some other people might want to take a look at that on him, too.
That would make fighters like Khabib impenetrable to body shots.
Yeah, fuck, no kidding. Yeah, Khabib has never fucking taken a lick of alcohol in his lifetime, right? But anyways, a lot of interesting stuff there. But Mark put me in the category of, I don't bet on fights or things connected to fights, but you force me to make a bet. I'll bet that fight's going to happen. I'll bet we'll be announcing that fight before the end of the year. And maybe they'll announce it in Toronto. But we'll leave that there for now. But trust me, I think we're going to see Cowboy Cerrone versus Conor McGregor.
We got about 10 more minutes. You want to do a quick BKB and call?
Yes. So if you're, Mark just asked if we want to do some BKB. So we will circle back and we will be talking about Cyborg versus Amanda. We will be talking about UFC in Toronto for the featherweight title. We will be talking about Joanna versus Shevchenko. We will be talking about Henry versus TJ Dillashaw all next time. We're going to get to a lot of this. But right now I want to tell you about Bare Knuckle Boxing. Bare Knuckle Boxing, I am going to London right after this. By the time you watch this, I may be there. I may be already back. It could be 2030. I don't fucking know. But I go to London and I commentate with a great team, Bare Knuckle Boxing. Now, there is... You may have, if you are consuming this, you're probably a big fight fan or you stumbled onto this and you're like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? But you may have noticed that there is some bare knuckle boxing popping up in America. And I think that's cool. And I think I haven't had a chance to watch all of it. But I have friends connected to the different shows. And I'm not surprised that it is popping up because it is a wonderful, wonderful sport, art, martial art. I work for Bare Knuckle Boxing. It's called BKB. And in London, it's going to be BKB 14. Okay? BKB 14. Not 1 or 2 or 3. And it's 14 plus they've had Be Bad. And there was a number that were coming up leading up to it. And the reason I mention that, and I'm going to just pull up a little bit about some of the fights here on my telephone. The reason I mention that is because this isn't like, it's cool right now, and definitely this is something new and people are going to dig it. This is old. Bare Knuckle Boxing was around well before gloved boxing. Bare Knuckle Boxing was early men fighting. And a lot of the culture of what it is, the reason I'm asking you to watch BKB 14 is not just because I commentated, but I commentated because I love it. Is because of the beauty of the fighting. We'll talk a little bit about the subtleties that make some of the beauty of bare knuckle boxing. We only have 10 minutes, so not a lot. We'll circle back. I've also touched on it before. If you go back and check out an episode of Water, I did talk a little bit about it.
I'll also include a link for an amazing documentary called Knuckle. That everyone has
incredible,
to watch.
Yeah. Check out Mark. Mark will have BKB 14. An incredible... Knuckle, it's an incredible documentary.
That's more related to the type of BKB that you're calling.
Yes.
And that's more the culture that you're...
This culture is BKB 14. This culture has come down for generations, right? So the main... one of the main, or the main event, or one of them, is Jimmy Sweeney versus Colin Fletcher. Now, Colin Fletcher, some people saw him fight in the UFC, and he's quite a talented martial artist in many ways. Has a lot of submissions in his background, but he can fight. Jimmy Sweeney, who is the champion in now 1, maybe 2 weight divisions, looking for a 3rd, he's basically the king of bare knuckle. His father was a bare knuckle fighter. His brother was a bare knuckle fighter. His cousins, his grandfather. It comes down, right? In history. These guys, this is not a bunch of people saying, fighting's cool, why don't we take the gloves off? This is the history of bare knuckle boxing. This is where it came from. This is the culture of it, right? It is a gentleman's sport. It comes down from a gentleman's sport where they appreciate each other. It is a contest between gentlemen. And it is a wonderful sport. Very quickly, the hands, of course. Why do we even wear gloves? Why do we wear gloves in boxing or MMA? To protect him? Protect my hands, right? That's why we wear gloves. Now, yes, it'll help with cuts and stuff as well, but essentially we are there to protect our hands so we can fight longer and we can fight harder, which of course is tougher on the opponent. Gloved boxing in many ways is tougher on you. It's not tougher in how you hit and how it hurts, but it's tougher on you in the long run. And I mean that in not a good way. Tougher on your health. Bare knuckle boxing is tougher on the man. Tougher on your hands. Tougher on your skin. Tougher on your bones. It's a hard sport. These are hard men. These are hard men. I could talk about some of the fights. We don't really have the time. We will circle back, and I'm going to be talking about it a great deal more. But all I'm telling you is respect to those new bare knuckle organizations. I haven't had a chance to look deeply into them, and I am a lover and as who was it? Who fought Phil Baroni? One of the reasons I work for BKB is Phil Baroni was going to fight on there. He's been going to these guys and saying, you should get Robin Black on your shows. He's a connoisseur of bare knuckle boxing. And I do understand it in a different way. It is a martial art. The weapons are different. The targets, although the same, the tools that block are different in relationship to the weapons. The bones of the hand hit the bone of the head. How your knuckles dig into the soft tissue of your arms and your shoulders are different. There's a lot of differences in the sport itself, in the way that it's contested, in what's asked for from you, in what's asked for from each man, what they demand of each other. It is a beautiful and wonderful sport. Toughness, mental toughness, the ability to handle. Oh, you got to see it. You just got to fucking see it. And again, I haven't consumed the American ones that are coming up. But I respect that they appreciate some of the beauty of this, but this has the history. This BKB has the history. This has come from pre-gloved boxing. This is the original boxing, and it has been passed from family member to family member, from region to region, generation to generation. Ireland, England, that's what makes this special. Yes, it's visceral. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it is sometimes brutal in its beauty. It is as elegant as it is vulgar, but it also is an incredible history, and it has an incredible culture. And I'm very, very proud to be a part of the commentary team. So please, if you're watching this after, you can see BKB, Bare Knuckle Boxing, on YouTube. You can go to BKB Official on Twitter and Instagram. And if you're watching this after, then join us for BKB 15 or BKB 16, because these guys have been around for a long time. They're well before this organization, and they'll be around for a long time, regardless of all the other people in the world that celebrate this. So please check it out, because I love my job. I get to commentate a lot of brilliant things. Middle East for Brave, and TKO, the best one in Canada, and I'm doing BTC, sorry, which is the best one in Ontario, probably. Ontario is a hard place to do fighting. I get to commentate fights all over the world. I do analysis for KSW and for RT and for One Championship. I got a call with One again Tuesday, so we're going to do more stuff for them one way or another. I get to do a lot of things, and it's hard to pick a favorite, but BKB is one of my very favorites. There's something very, very special about the fights, about the team too. I love the people that we're working with. About the crowd,
the atmosphere,
the crowd, yeah. I look forward to going, and maybe I'll be a guest commentator. There was talk. People have asked me to contribute to the American ones too. I don't know how that will unfold. If I'm loyal to BKB, but if there's some way I can do, who knows? Maybe I'll be at some of these. I don't know what the audience is like there, but I can tell you the audience for BKB. There's as bloodthirsty as it gets at times, there's a beauty and an appreciation and a true reverence of these hard men.
And there's a level of sensibility amongst the patrons there.
Yeah. They're well dressed, and they're they're classy. It's cool. You got to see it. So if you haven't, channelfight.com is one of the best places you can see it. Mark might get this up before the fights, although when I'm recording this, I'm only maybe 3 flights, 3 long flights away, because I got to go to Turkey and Bahrain first. I'm leaving in a couple hours, but if you can see it on YouTube, anyways, check it out. It's special. It's special. I'm honored to commentate it, and I'm honored also that you guys hang out and listen to these thoughts. It's fucking unbelievable. there are times where I'm sitting around and I can't believe in 2018 what we can do and how ideas are shared, and how, you know, if I've got something I want to share, I can just consume it from all different angles, as many different ways as possible, and call people and Skype with people and watch things and download things and read books at triple speed while on an airplane, and talk to my friend David Klonsky. I'm writing a book on combat sports psychology. We're Skyping from fucking Turkey, and it's incredible. And we can share this kind of stuff. And if you're interested and you're still here, go to shoprobinblack.com. This on a shirt. I appreciate you guys always. I don't point you to buying things very often, but I think it's cool if you're wearing that. Like, I think people walking around with pink on their shirt is fucking cool. And please follow me on Instagram and Twitter. It's at RobinBlackMMA. And thank you so much. Thank you so much. We'll be back here as soon as possible. Until then, enjoy the hostilities, my friends.